guys, here come the dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Clubmobile. We're so happy to have you, as always. And joining us today is a very special guest, and I think we could call him a friend at this point. Dan Rosenthal, son of pilot from the Hundredth Bomb Group, Rosie Rosenthal. Dan, thanks for hanging out with us.
Hello, you two.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm alive and I'm looking forward to having a fun time with both of you on this.
And it will be, as
Yes.
always.
As always.
Of course, our podcast is, our main subject is women during the war. So we're really excited to be able to speak with Dan about his mother, Phillis. I just want to jump right in. So Dan, Phillis was a wave, right, in the Navy. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think we need to back up. My mother grew up in Smithtown, New York, which was a suburb in Long Island. She grew up in a very upper class type of family. Her dad was already living here with other relatives, and her father went to Harvard law school and was quite, as I said, quite a real estate attorney. And then from there, his wife's name was Bessie, and then they happened to have three beautiful children. Frances was the eldest, then Richard, then my mom. And this is a nice little photo of when they were growing up. That's her mom, Bessie, and Frances is the taller one, Richard, and then Phyllis is in the front of the vehicle as she normally was.
Put herself in the front
charge.
seat, of course.
And then her, as I said, her father went to Harvard. Her brother also went to Harvard Law School, but dropped out when his mother passed away. And then when the war started, he enlisted in the Navy, and then as part of his negotiations, because he was a pretty good attorney even before becoming an attorney, was able to negotiate that he would continue his law degree over at NYU, and then do his service. And he was and during his military career, he served down in Brazil, a very tough assignment.
I'm sure it was.
He had to play tennis and volleyball and all of those horrible things down there. But he worked kind of as let's see. He worked a little bit for the spy system. He was trying to decode things from German submarines.
Amazing.
He was what it was called an interlooper, whatever that is.
I've never heard of that. I'm gonna have to look into that because I've never heard.
I will as well when I'm done here.
We're gonna know what it means.
The spy ring in the war is just all very interesting to me.
It's all very fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and when and he was a big influence on my mom growing up, and this is my mom later on.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and this is her brother Richard.
Oh wow, very handsome.
Very
handsome. They came from such an ugly family.
They had no hope, Dan.
None. Clearly, that's when it all stopped. So, and then he was a big influence on my mom. And when my mom went to law school back in 1941, Harvard wasn't accepting women at all then. So she went to Columbia Law School, and where she was only one of a handful of women studying to become attorneys, and the professors were trying to wash out all of the women and would only address them as sir, and that was some of the nicer language. And my mom, being as rebellious as she was, um, smoked a corn pipe during class, and but graduated in 44, and then she enlisted to become in the Waves and served down in Washington, D.C. And that's my
Oh, there she is. I see her.
Oh, look at her.
Amazing.
I love these old pictures.
Me too.
she's somewhere there.
Yeah, I see. I
Figure it
can see
out.
her.
Yes.
Yeah, there she is.
There she is. See, we were correct. I knew it. There
Sorry
she
about
is,
my
right
finger
there.
and bending of the fumble,
You're
but
fine.
that's it. That's what, um, and then from there, uh, she she um she was working down in Washington, D.C., and she's written up in this book,
Yeah.
Our Mother's War by Emily Yellen.
Hmm.
Clearly, she had a hearing impairment. No, I'm kidding. Um, but when she was working down in Washington, D.C., she was working in administrative law at the Bureau of Naval Personnel. And as the war ended, it was one of the greatest adventures of her life to be able to, because her brother from his naval career volunteered at the beginning of the Nuremberg War Tribunals, and her brother played a big influence in her life. And then she decided to enlist, and was accepted to work for Telford Taylor as well, as well as her brother, what his brother did, her brother did. And but her brother came back before these really the start of the tribunals, but he was giving a lot of credit for bringing up the head of the Nazi naval admirals to trial. And then, but the British wanted to take control of all of his work, and he was very happy to relinquish that over to them, because he had worked with a lot of the attorneys over there preparing the case, and he was only too proud to share it. And apparently, his work really helped put this admiral behind bars.
Wow.
Good. It's amazing.
Yeah, and
Wasn't sorry, you go ahead.
no, please.
I'm curious to know if going back to Nuremberg, because we're right at the start of that story, was it something your mother ever talked about with you when you were younger, or was it something that you had to find out for yourself in some
Uh,
way?
well, my parents used to lecture to law students about the Nuremberg War Tribunals. And I would go, and during my teen years, and I would watch. I actually videoed one of their talks, and I can't find that tape anywhere. So I'm heartbroken about that, because it was extraordinary working with. They worked with a Holocaust survivor, and she, of course, had everyone in tears. And then my father and mother would talk about how the tribunals came about and how difficult it was, and the first time in history, obviously, of these type of trials. The trials uh, back after World War One and in Versailles, they had wanted to do trials, this type of trials, but no one could agree upon it. So it never came about, unfortunately. So after World War II, uh, the four nations over there really wanted to come together and put these tribunals together. And as we all know, that was no easy feat to come to terms, especially because all of this was brand new and had to be created. But they came up with a set of laws and agreed upon on how to run the trials. And Telford Taylor was unbelievable for the Americans to pull all of this information together, and it was quite powerful, and those effects are still being felt all the way up until today. During Vietnam, people were held accountable for their actions in Vietnam, and one trial was with a lieutenant. I forget his name, but he was in charge, and his guys wiped out an entire village with women and children, and he was held accountable for it, as well as his men, because they were supposed to have a moral and obligation as to if it's morally wrong, you are morally obligated to say no, and not fulfill those orders.
Yeah.
So let me back up and let me talk a little bit about how my mother, after she was accepted, she went down to the Brooklyn Navy Yard to disembark on an Army ship, and the gangplank was taken up. Of course, that ship was delayed in disembarking, but thankfully that was uh, because my mother was never on time for anything except for a marriage and the firstborn. I think that was it. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so there was a cargo net filled with crates waiting to be hoisted up onto the ship, and eventually this Jeep comes roaring down to the pier filled with this all of this luggage, and this beautiful woman sitting in the front, and all of her luggage was put on top of the this cargo crates and netting, and she sat on it and was hoisted up and onto the ship. And that was my mom going up there. And when she finally met my dad on the ship, she didn't like the person who my father was friends with. So my father was guilty by association. And it wasn't until later on that she saw that my dad was really the only one playing with children on the ship. And then she inquired about my father, and she learned a little bit more about my dad's war story. And she became quite intrigued, and they went out on dates for 10 days straight. And my father thought she was hysterical. She knew jokes for every occasion and every night that they were out. And then he proposed, and she accepted. And after that, a short time later, she ran out of jokes. And my father said, What happened? And she said, Oh, I had to stop dating since we're engaged. And all of these boys that I was dating, they all had these terrific jokes, and I was able to repeat it to you.
There's a story in Our Mother's War in your mother's section where um she asked him to ask her dad for permission,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
was a case of he asked, didn't get an answer, but he did it anyway, and she was absolutely fine with it.
Well, she insisted. My father was very old fashioned, and so he wanted to ask permission. And my mother said, "Sure, you can go ahead and ask." And so he sent off a letter, and a letter came immediately back saying, from her father, saying, "I forbid this. Please wait until you get back to the States, and then we'll discuss." And my father, upon receiving that, said to Phillis, "Well, I guess that's that." And Phyllis looked at him and said, "No." I said, "You could ask for permission. I don't care. So we're going to get married." And my
One
father
of my favorite stories. I love it because she
and
was like, okay.
yeah, and my father said at that point he always used to tell me at that point, I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah, because she's sassy and she knew what she wanted.
Yes,
And she said, I told you to ask. I didn't tell you you had to wait till you said yes. Whatever, you did what I
absolutely.
said.
Absolutely. And that was her rule of thumb, uh,
Mm.
by the way. So eventually they were married by the mayor of Nuremberg. Um, uh, and they, for some chocolate and a few dollars and cartons of cigarettes, they rented out the entire hall. Um, uh, and had a full band and everything. And when it came time for the ceremony, the mayor of Nuremberg only spoke German. My father spoke Brooklynese, and, and my mother spoke several different languages, so she was fine. So when it came time for the mayor to say, "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" It was in German, and my father was not going to say anything that he didn't. He wasn't going to respond to anything that he didn't understand.
Yeah.
So he just stood there, and so the mayor repeated it again, and my father just stood there again, and he repeated it a third time, and the best man said "Jawohl," and my father looked at the best man and said, "No, no, Jawohl." And so they were married. And my father said, "I'm not so sure I'm married to Phyllis after that, but
Hey, it worked. It was
it
legally
worked out.
binding.
It worked out. I saw their marriage license.
All
You know,
worked out in the
he can say otherwise." And then the honeymoon. They travel by train to various places, and then they honeymoon on top of Eagle's Nest.
I
And
love that.
and my mother wore lederhosen up there and did a little jig, and you also have some photos that I sent you.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
My mother giving my father a piggyback ride, and then
I
my
think
mother
that's
up on
one of
his
our
shoulder,
favorites.
That one might be one of my favorite ones.
Where
and
she's in her cute little lederhosen and then she has your dad on on her
On her back.
well, it was the last time she did that, I think, but
back.
no, but they were great together,
Mm.
and and so let's shift back to the Nuremberg War
Mm.
Tribunals.
Yes, please.
But in effect, she investigated IG Farben and others, which used slave laborers, and in this particular case from Auschwitz. And during her discovery of what took place over at Auschwitz, she came across Dr. Joseph Mengele's experiments done on living people. And one experiment in this book was that they would expose women to X-rays, and so much so that these X-rays would actually have the breast fall off. Um, that's how horrendous these so-called experiments were done. And then another one was done on young women and adult women, how much cement a uterus could hold before it would burst. And my mother basically stated at the end of this was she couldn't grasp the rationale behind this, and the only thing is she kept saying why,
Yeah.
and there's no rational answer to that. There's no
No.
um, so those are the type of things that my mother did over there.
Yeah.
Her research and exposure of this. The Germans were wonderful in keeping detailed records of all of these things.
Yeah.
she found triplicates of all of these experiments, and hundreds of these experiments she uncovered. So thankfully, they had one another to commiserate with
Yeah.
and to fall in love with in these strange times, because Nuremberg was declared virtually destroyed.
Mm.
It was in
Yeah.
rubble and ruins. And
Mm.
one night they were walking in the dark, and my mother was a smoker back then, and they were being followed. And they became quite nervous because of these dark streets, and they didn't know who was following them. And then my mother was smoking. When she was done with her cigarette, she would throw it down on the ground, and these guys, these shadows, figures would come out and run for the cigarette butts. So that shows
Wow.
you the desperate nature
Yeah.
of what was going on there. Um, so my father interrogated Goering, Keitel, and Jodl, the three real main heads of the German military,
Mm.
um, and Telford Taylor and everyone gave my father due credit for all of his research and findings for the high command's part of the trials, and in which he was very successful at helping to find these people guilty. One was acquitted, but that's what happened back then, and it's the first time in history that man was held accountable for crimes against humanity,
Yeah.
and it was quite a remarkable thing. First and foremost, just in my family alone, to have three attorneys work at the tribunals.
Yeah.
That is something that I haven't heard of other families having that type of um, volunteerism, uh, and I wouldn't serving their country in this manner.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was really quite remarkable within all of that.
Yeah.
Uh,
When did they return to the States? Was it directly after the trial had ended, or was there some kind of
no,
gap?
they left early. Somehow or another, Phyllis became pregnant.
It's a mystery to
How did that
everyone.
happen?
We don't know. We never talk about our parents like that. We don't want to know.
No, thank you.
And um, but they didn't want to have my sister Peggy born on German soil at that
Right.
time.
Right.
They wanted, especially being Jewish, and I believe that they were the first Jews, and certainly American Jews, to be married in Germany at that time.
Wow.
Wow.
They wanted to come stateside, and then my sister was born in Flushing, Queens, and Manhattan, and but when they did come back stateside, this is when Phyllis's dad, Isaac, wanted to meet my dad. And so they had a lavish dinner reception, and my father was asked to serve the wine, and my father uh, really was pouring quite heavily in this one glass, almost overflowing the glass, and her father turned to my father and said, "Young man, that glass is quite full." And my father, without missing a beat, picked up the glass and said, "Yes, I know, sir, and this is for you." And that's how my father's sense and sensibility. Listen, after everything he saw during World War II
Honestly, yes.
and during the trials, this was nothing to him. And
Yeah.
and then later at dinner, he was leaning over and they were having soup, and his bottom of his tie falls into the soup, And my father, without missing a beat, it was like a silent movie episode. He picks up the end of his tie and he twists it, and so that the drips can go back into the soup bowl, and then tucks his tie away and continues to eat like there's nothing happened.
Oh my. So
He,
safe to say your parents both had a great sense of humor after
Well,
everything.
oh
well,
yeah.
they had a tremendous love story. My father really had a great sense of humor,
Hmm.
really a great sense of humor. Much more so than my mom in many instances, although she could tell a pretty good joke every now and then. Uh, but my dad growing up in Brooklyn, lower income, and his mother, his mother and sister and his uncle were all very musically inclined and would play the piano and all sing. And my father was tone deaf. And when he would sing, people would always go, something's off. Uh, but my father was a big jazz aficionado, would go down to clubs in New York City and see people like Ella Fitzgerald and others in the club and just have a beer for a couple of shows and just nurse that. Um, but that was that. They 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 had a wonderful wonderful relationship. They were best friends. Um, they I think I discussed this at one point with you. At times when I was a young person and my friends would come over to the house, my parents would often be on the couch making out. And when my friends would come over, they would say they were accustomed to this. And they would say, "Oh, hello, Bob. Hello, Phyllis." And their hands, my parents' hands would come up. They would not stop their embrace and they would just wave. And then we would just go on our way.
Oh,
And so
This
that
is
was
just
the
normal.
nature of the
But
relationship.
that's so lovely that that was so normal for them
yes.
to do. And I love that.
I told them
Um,
to get a room.
they said we do. It's the living room
We have
down
a
here.
room.
Exactly.
It's this one.
And then they reminded me of whose house it really was.
There you go. Yeah, I knew that was
Exactly.
coming. Very, very cheekily, will you tell our listeners the story of your dad riding the horse? Because there's a line in the show where he says Jews from Brooklyn don't ride horses, but that has now been disproven thanks to this.
Yes.
When they were in Masters of the Air, when they were going to the Flack House, some of his crew members said, "Rosie, they have horses here. You're going to go riding." And my father just didn't want anything to do with that. Uh, and so he said, Jews from Brooklyn don't ride horses. And this was John Orloff's interpretation of it. John did know that my father did ride horses because I did tell him about this one story. When my father was very young, um, Flatbush Avenue and Brooklyn was largely farm area.
Hmm.
So Flatbush Avenue was a dirt road, and my father rode a horse down Flatbush Avenue. And uh, so that kind of debunks
It
that
does.
It does. I
part
haven't
of
been able
And
to
I
watch it the
can,
same since.
I know, and I can confirm to our listeners that today you can almost not even cross the street on Flatbush Avenue because that's how
Let
much
alone ride
traffic
a
is down
horse.
there. So a horse, good luck trying to cross the street.
Not happening.
Not
Not
happening.
happening.
That's
Um,
exactly
that's
true.
so we've
And
debunked it. Sorry, John Orloff. We've
Sorry to
debunked
John
it.
Olaf.
I love
Sorry to
John.
everyone.
I love John, and what he did was was a masterpiece in storytelling. So,
Absolutely.
It
and,
was.
and
Growing up, obviously, both parents serving in the military. Did you and your siblings grow up in a very strict household? Was your mom and dad, were they very strict with you, or was one less strict than the other?
Well, growing up, I had to salute even when I was in diapers. No, no, no.
Impressive. That's
Uh,
impressive.
well,
Amazing. Love
or
that.
or a little scary.
You're a smart family.
No, they weren't anything like that. My father was a very loving, caring guy. My mother had some health issues, but and she did the best she could at that time with all of us. But my father was tremendously involved in helping us with our homework and other things. My father would also cook um,
Wow.
breakfast for us before school and during the weekends. And very often he would make pancakes, and then we would challenge him how high he could throw the pancakes up. And and this one time, they all stuck to the ceiling. And we were all laughing
Oh
hysterically, and we
no.
all knew that if he didn't clean it, he was in for a hellacious time with his wife. So we were all laughing hysterically, and then I watched my father get up there and scrape them all down.
Just before she saw. Oh my
Just
goodness.
before.
Oh, I think he left a little remnants to say, see what I
There
did?
you go.
But they had a wonderful relationship, and they would always hold hands. And when they would go out for walks, up until the very end, then when they could no longer really go, they would go out for walks, and all of the neighbors would see them walking, always holding hands. And this one picture kind of showed
Look at
They
them.
were always holding hands. I
that
love them. So
um,
sweet.
it was
Would
very, very sweet.
would they attend Hundredth bomb group reunions together? Were the kids invited, or was it just like an adults only thing? You kids can't come yet type thing.
Well, back in the 50s, my father recognized that it was important for these veterans to communicate with one another. Um, for the obvious reason, no one else could possibly understand what they
Right.
went through. So my father really began the association back in 1959, and they did have some very big reunions or with the association, and then at one point in California, there were over 1,000 people attending this one reunion, and we went with my parents to that, and it was really overwhelming with the amount of people wanting to be with my father. So the kids and the one grandchild that was with us, Katie, we decided to pull back and just let my folks be there, and we would do activities with them when they were available.
Right.
Um, and then we really wanted to keep that separate and apart
Yeah.
because we didn't want to take any time away from him or have him concerned about us.
Yeah.
And so, but uh, we were always welcome to join him, but we declined, obviously, for those reasons.
Yeah.
Um, it was an amazing situation. How this association then eventually evolved to a foundation, and my father brought in the treasurer, and Nancy Putnam she brought in, and he brought in her for that, and then my father, when he was dying from multiple myeloma, asked me to also work with the foundation. And I was happy. I was honored, first off, that he was thinking of me in that manner. Um, I had started a foundation for working with various disabilities, and I had one of the larger adaptative ski schools in the world that I developed. And so my father knew that I had some capabilities within all of that. So I of course said yes, and then I served as the longest serving president at that time, and we turned the foundation around that was struggling to one that's really quite, I think, one of the healthiest, if not the healthiest, of the entire Eighth Air Force foundations in existence today. So I'm very proud of that work, and the work continues
Oh
uh,
yeah.
in a lot of
It's
different ways, as
amazing.
you folks know.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
We're,
and
I think I could say for both of us, Winnie, we're both honored to be
Oh,
part of it and
absolutely.
be members.
What a gift, truly,
Yes.
to be involved with. And I get the sense that everyone is a family. You can't really say that about a lot of things where you've been through all these years together, and then you're quite happily letting young people in because of a TV show. A lot of it is because of people being exposed to
Yeah.
watching the show, and I think it's amazing. I think it's the reason we're here talking to you, which is
absolutely,
incredible. um
absolutely. And let me just tell you that uh, my father and I used to talk about what he went through. We would play tennis together, and when we were sitting, I would ask him various questions. And one of the questions I did ask him was, uh, out of the entire war, what memory can't you shake? Um, and he said it was the smell of burnt flesh that he still had with him. That emotion, that element, and many of the veterans,
yeah,
um, the smell of that and blood, and hearing the outcries of the wounded.
yeah,
So my father really wanted to keep all of those elements alive and
yeah,
and and thankfully Don Miller, wrote this magnificent book. My father worked with him on the book, and it was Don uh, fell in love with my dad, and my dad fell in love with Don, but he told Don that he was married.
mm.
So
And my wife would not be pleased on.
exactly, exactly. And so it was that.
Yeah.
And my father, when he was stateside, um, did not go back to that big law firm. He decided to work independently, and then he worked at a building called number 225 Broadway, which was basically across the street from City Hall. And he shared an office with many other attorneys there. And a number of them lived in the town that I grew up in, Harrison, New York. And so they would carpool. And this one day, they were laughing and telling so many stories and jokes that when they realized where they were, they wound up deep in New Jersey. They had crossed over the George Washington Bridge without even knowing it. And they were all late for their appointments, but they had the best time. And then somehow or another, they all met up for lunch that day.
What did he manage?
So
Did your mother return to being an attorney after she had you kids, or was she at home for?
she was home, but she did a lot of pro bono work
Mm.
for the town of Harrison. She helped set up a youth, something called the Harrison Youth Shelter, which was really the first of its kind in many other places nationally adopted what they were doing there. And it was setting up for first and second time youth offenders and having a halfway house for these kids to stay at and to get counseling and tutoring and even job placement for them because invariably their home life was really hard.
Yeah.
And this was a great way for them to um, develop and not fall into the path of the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And so she did that for a long time. This is a plaque that I don't know if you can see it here, but
We can see it.
There it is.
There's a
Yes.
bit of reflection, but yeah, we see it.
and then she was got the Citizen of the Year award in
Amazing.
Wow, look at that.
so and that was for the town of Harrison, but for that. And then I was able to take this picture. Let me see if I can.
Oh,
How
look.
cute.
And look, they're holding hands again, even though your mum is holding her little award. Dad's still there holding her
Oh,
hand.
Yes.
I
So
love it.
so that's how they were together. Uh, and that's my memory of them.
Mm.
And they were lovely. Phyllis could be abrupt at times, but that's okay. She grew up in a family that was pretty abrupt because after her mother died, her father became quite a bit of a taskmaster, should I say?
Mm.
I'm saying that kindly.
Mm.
And so she tried to escape that, and her brother and sister, particularly her brother, tried to protect her from.
Yeah.
But it's, as I said, it's quite a love story. They were married for just about 60 years, and as my father said, and I never won an argument.
Of
And then
course
he
he
said,
didn't.
and
Two
then
attorneys got married. That's never
and,
gonna.
and then he said, except for that one time, and then later on, Phyllis pointed out that I was wrong, and so that
So
was
I
all
didn't win
corrected.
after all. I bet
And
you never won an argument either with
I
either of your parents.
I tried to go to arbitration several times, but it was all rigged.
It had to be.
Yeah.
There was, negotiation against you.
But
Um,
no, I'm sorry, please.
no, but very self-indulgently, I would love to know your opinion on the show. We know that you were involved in a little bit of Masters of the Air. When they picked the actor to play your father, how was the reaction? Because obviously your dad didn't have facial hair, and yet here comes here comes this mustache.
Well, my brother was a little off put by that, but I
Mm.
I turned to my brother and I said, "Yeah, but you could grow a beard. Your father couldn't." Uh, I did have the pleasure of working with Kirk Sadowski and John Orloff and a few others during the process of this. And I did have John and his assistant over at my house, and I was able to go through a lot of my dad's materials and other things to let John borrow them to utilize that. And then he and I became friends, and we would quite often speak on the phone. And then during the shooting, during COVID, uh, I was invited, Sam, my son Sam, who's an actor, and I flew over to England during COVID, and England was very strange with their
That was an
approach.
experience for you, I assume, because they were extremely strict
Well,
on those guidelines.
we were supposed to stay apart from everyone for 10 days to isolate ourselves. And so we were going to comply. And then when we arrived, we got this home testing kit that they sent out. And we did that and we put it back in the bag. And then the instruction said, all right, now take this over to the nearest post office and mail it.
Makes zero sense.
And it was a
Just
beautiful day out.
always.
And
Isolate, but go to the post office.
Yeah.
and we were in Cambridge, and so Sam and I decided to walk over. We deposited into the mail slot, and and then I turned to Sam. I said, "Do you remember where we were, where Airbnb is?" And he looked at me and said, "No idea.
No.
I think it's down near that espresso shop that we passed. Uh,
It's
you know,
confusing.
but it's that way, and we all knew that our place was the other way."
Yeah, it seems, especially in Cambridge, you can go one way to a place, but you can't go back the other way to get back there. You have to sort of reroute yourself.
The number of roundabouts I
Uh,
took in
So
Cambridge was
many.
enough to have my head spinning.
well,
Everything was a roundabout, and it's the roundabout, but then it's the third out of the round.
Yeah, very confusing.
so
Don't
so
they know the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line?
so Sam and I had a wonderful time. We went to the espresso place. We had a beautiful time there. Then we went to the park, and we were out there watching and sunning ourselves, and then we continued our tour around. We went to a restaurant. We ate. Um, the whole thing, and then the British government kept calling me saying, "Are you isolating yourself?" And I said,
Yes.
"Of course we are, but we have to. We're staying at an Airbnb, and we're just getting supplies."
Mm.
Oh, good, okay. And then they would call me again later, and I said, "Oh, I forgot something. I
I
had to
need to
run
go
out
back
again."
out. Very annoying.
And then
Extremely
and
annoying.
and then we got the test that ended it, I think, in 7 days or something
Ended the
like that.
isolation, yeah.
And then we were able to let Kirk know that we were free and clear now to come and visit. And so we went back down to London to stay at a place, and then uh, Kirk sent somebody. No, then we had to take another COVID test the day or day and a half before. And so we got that taken care of, and then we were driven up to the studio, to the production headquarters, and there, as we were walking in, I hear John Orloff's booming voice saying, "Dan Rosenthal, Sam Rosenthal, it's about goddamn time." And I look upstairs, and there he is, and he's running downstairs. Thankfully, he didn't hurt himself coming down. And we had a great hug, and then he brought us upstairs, and we had a wonderful time with everyone there, met everyone. And then we weren't supposed to have an opportunity to meet with Nate Mann, who played my father. But lo and behold, he showed up.
I'm
And
not letting this pass me by. I have to go. I have to go see them.
it was wonderful. We spent a long time talking about my dad, and then we were asking him about his research, and then it became quite emotional. I said, "How are you able to um, gra be able to understand my dad's essence and his makeup?" And he just looked at me and said, "I'm part Jewish, and we have family during that time in Europe." And he began to well up. And Sam and I looked at him, and we both gave him a hug and said, "You don't have to say anything else. We get it. We get it, and you're going to do a great job." And then my dad had a my dad was accepted into the Jewish American Hall of Fame, and he had a medallion uh, made up, um, which I don't have. Oh, I do have one here.
Nope.
And uh, Sam and I had one, and I had Sam present this to Nate. Um,
Oh,
and then of my dad's
I love
crew.
that.
how beautiful.
That's so wonderful.
I love that.
And we said, Nate, why don't you just keep this in a pocket when you're on set so that you know that my dad is with you
Oh,
all. And again, we hugged, and he thanked us for coming there, and I thanked him for being able to spend you know, 45 minutes with us.
mm,
And and then he had to go. But it was very powerful to spend
mm.
time with him, and it was just quite lovely to have that opportunity for him as well as for us.
Oh, for sure.
And
Uh,
then and then my son was asked to come back to be a Balteric gunner, I believe, in the series for so he came back and shot for a day, and
But
and
he had a great time.
he had a great time,
He
and he looked so damn good in it. It was
does. He looks great.
and not that I'm jealous, but he did look good.
I wanted a little bit. That's it. I said I wanted some time in there too.
when we spoke with Rebecca Crosby previously, she mentioned growing up a lot of time, spending a lot of time with your family. Do you have like like was your dad and Harry Crosby were as close as they made it seem on the show? Your families were very close?
We tried to change the locks on the house several times, but Uh, Harry always, no, Harry was always a welcome guest in the house.
Aw.
We had Harry Crosby, we had Horace Varian, and so many other people would, Pappy Lewis, his co-pilot,
Aw.
came over, and even the volunteers from Thorpe Abbott's would come over to the house, and they
That's so
stayed with
great.
us on one occasion. And so, yes, they were always welcome in the house. A matter of fact, as their day when they had all of these guys together, the drinks would begin to somehow pour, and sometime later the laughter became a lot louder, and the stories became a lot more interesting. And I was sent upstairs along with my siblings. We weren't supposed to be around, but I would sneak down the steps to hear all of this stuff. And the fishtails that these guys would get into, the stories would, over the years, it just would grow.
Like all good kids, we all snuck down at some point to listen to our parents.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Especially with parents as interesting as these,
Yes.
I would I remember it now. There we go. Would your mother ever join your father and talk about her own service, or was it a case of she would just let your dad talk about his? Was it ever shared with everybody else?
Only, well, yes. I mean, with me, it was shared. I would discuss things with her about the stories, as I mentioned, about when they would walk down the streets, these dark streets in Nuremberg, um, uh, and other instances like that. She would share those type of stories, and but it was really tough emotionally on them with all of this, but they felt compelled to share um, what they went through. And
Yeah.
it's an important lesson in history that it's passed down, um, because, if democracy can be holding on by a thread, and if we're not respectful and careful with it, we can lose it quite
Yeah.
quite easily, and that's a scary thing. And so they were always conscientious about history. And
Yeah.
my father was a ferocious reader of history, as well as my mom. And by the way, my father is being written up in a history textbook in for New York City.
Is
Amazing.
he?
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
never anybody that interesting in the textbook when I was in school.
Yeah, that's
So
unfortunate.
I envy the children that get to learn about your dad in history.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think it's important, and I think kudos to New York for doing something right.
Yeah,
Kudos to the state of New York for doing something right.
yeah,
exactly.
it was a bit of a shock having them reach out,
Yeah.
my jaw almost hit the ground when I heard that New York City was doing. I don't want to say anything bad about this. I'm just delighted that they're doing
Oh, of
this.
course. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's
And
wonderful.
and we are too. And again, I feel super lucky that we get to do this, and I'm able to share this with my kids, and it's never gonna stop being told, which
Uh,
is incredible.
I think that's wonderful, and that's we have to do that because unfortunately our educational system, especially in the States, uh, is doing a disservice by that, by not
It
doing it
is.
a
Yeah,
justice.
absolutely.
So it really, and that's why also it was so wonderful for Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg and everyone that worked on this, because really they are the storytellers of history now.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
are.
I think we discussed this earlier, Gabby, where we said that it's the first, for some people, it's the first point of learning about the war without
Yeah.
learning it at school.
Yeah.
It's the first place they go to. They'll watch Band of Brothers or The Pacific, and now they can watch Masters of the
Media
Air,
consumption is,
and they can go away with it and Google it. We have the world at our fingertips, and they can learn anything they want to learn.
they can.
Right.
This
Yeah,
generation is very fortunate in that respect.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And my family and I were just recently in Normandy,
Yeah,
where a statue was unveiled for the mighty Eighth Air Force, finally having a statue honoring the Eighth Air Force in Normandy, which because without the Eighth Air Force doing what they did, D-Day would not have happened.
Right.
So it's terribly important that this statue is there. And General Doolittle is represented, Snuffy Smith, who was um, part of the ground crew and also a Voltaire gunner, I believe. And then Colonel Blakesley, who was an Air Force Command fighter pilot. And then I was honored, my father was honored, and he's one of the four. So we were over there for that, and uh, being in Normandy by itself is so emotionally draining. That was our first time over there, and what the Normandy Institute did to honor all of this was just masterful. So I'm
mm,
indebted to them, and I just wish that this was done maybe 30, 40 years ago to honor the vets when they were alive.
mm,
But it's there now, and it's there for people to learn. And I'm a big proponent of all of that.
yeah. And it's a beautiful piece as
It
well. And
is.
the pictures that we have seen of it, and we're hoping that we're lucky enough in the near future to be able to go ourselves
Absolutely.
and go see it for ourselves. So yeah,
Benjamin did he's
an excellent job.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
They
one of
really are beautiful
one of
statues.
I mean, he has several pieces in the Library of Congress. I mean,
Yeah,
he's just a lovely guy.
yeah,
So I encourage everyone to go over to Normandy to see this,
yeah,
and and uh, and that's it. That's
yeah.
so. Anyway, that's kind of a snapshot of my mom there.
And it was
That's his
beautiful.
story, and he's sticking to it,
I
guys.
yes, and
No
if
matter what
you
anyone says.
and if you fact check me, I'll deny it.
Absolutely, you should. And we'll back you up. It's
I
okay.
thank God somebody will.
Thank you so much, Dan, for
Dan,
joining us.
thank you
This
so
has
much.
been
This was a
wonderful.
real treat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And
It's
thank you
always
everyone for
fun.
listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.